lots has been made of vaporizing being safer than smoking marijuana. And my question to you is, does science agree with that? Is there science backing up that vaping is safer than smoking?
Yeah, 100%. In fact, sometimes I feel like because there are so many brands that people are forgetting that. Right off the top, the minute we're not combusting, we're, I'd say, in the 95% range of being better, right? So if you take a joint, for instance, where I'd say 90% of that smoke is just carbon and soot that you're putting into your lungs, and the rest is good THC, and it's great. With the vape pen, you basically get all the THC and such. And yeah, we talked about the propylene glycol. It's just not the toxins that are in something that is lit up. I mean, it's just that simple. So yeah, vape pens by definition are just way better than smoking.
And it's kind of like the marijuana equivalent to the e-cigarette revolution, and you can't, step foot outside this building without seeing people with their e-cigs.
And that's a good point that you made, because already you start to see the guys at Truth.com having their e-cig commercials, and kudos to them, because nicotine is not THC, and I don't want to have them lumped in. Not only that, nicotine juice is unregulated and out there and comes from China and has who knows what in it, and so it shouldn't be confused with like what I'm doing and what even other cannabis vapor providers are doing, because one thing about our over-regulation is they're looking at us, and so we put cannabis resin, we put our vapor carrier, and that's it, and then that goes out for testing. But we can't say the same thing for the tobacco industry guys. They're kind of just wild, wild west, and I've seen people trying to quit smoking using e-cigs because they were supposed to be a cessation device and end up huffing more nicotine than there in Marlboro Red. So, definitely not to be confused. I feel like on the cannabis side, it's being used correctly because it's safer and less carcinogenic than smoking. And the idea is to have potency in there, so we're not trying to wean people off of THC, but we also are in such a regulated environment that we're making it here. It's not coming from overseas. It's being tested, so you know that you don't have any craziness in there besides just your cannabis resin and your vapor carrier.
Sure. Brian, vaping, is it safer than smoking in your opinion?
I think it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I don't know.
Sure.
But I mean, it just makes sense if you're combusting at a much lower temperature than lighting something on fire. I mean, that's got to be better. And anecdotally, I mean, it feels better on my lungs if I use a vape pen versus smoke a joint. So I think that it is. What would be interesting is if, the truth.com and whatever, they do their studies, and if they find that although nicotine e-cigarettes are not safe, but they happen to be safer than cigarettes, then okay, they just showed that it's safer.
I'm really looking forward to the science. As a journalist, we thrive on information, correct information, factual information, and so I'm really looking forward to the science that's to come to tell us, because certainly when you're inhaling vapor, it feels better on your lungs. It feels less invasive than smoke. If you have access to any studies that
in fact I could forward it to you, because they have captured samples, and it's amazing. I mean, like the list, and even just cannabis, if we just keep it to cannabis, smoked cannabis, probably I believe numbers like 130 different components and chemicals that come from lighting, because you're not just lighting THC, you have all that green matter, right? And of course, I, like even old schoolers like myself, swear by it, but none of that stuff you need, and it's none, and that's why in recreating the vape pen and trying to keep it strain specific, I want to make sure that I'm bringing everything we need. And of course, there are old school guys that are like, well, it's nothing like smoking. And so I'm like, oh, so those other chemicals are what you're after. No, it's like literally 100 plus chemicals in something that's combusted, and in a vape pen, it's not. It's just the ones you put in.
And
propylene glycol THC resin.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the point. It is nothing like smoking, and we have a Ask the Cannabist columnist who she answers reader questions. She does a really great job of that. But somebody was asking about the high from vaporizing, and she said that some people quite accurately call it kind of like a half high, because it's not giving you the jolt that smoking flower will. Would you guys agree with that?
I definitely would.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more mild. I don't get it's not as intense. Although if you take 3 or 4 hits off a vape pen, I mean, you get high.
The analogy we use internally is we want to be more like the wine, right? So if dabbing is spirits and whiskey, and smoking a joint is kind of like that, we want to be more like the wine or the beer, right? It doesn't knock you down, but you can continue to vape it and eventually not be at a half high.
I would say dabs are more like the grain alcohol
yes, exactly,
of this world because, and granted, I've not dabbed, Brian. Props, because wow, I can't.
I had to try it, right? Because I sell it, but.
Yeah, do you have to try though?
I wish I could be in the boat with you guys. I had, as soon as with the torch it was a little bit much, but with the advent of the electric nail, the minute I saw that like a couple of hemp cons ago, a couple of years back, lines of people. I love in the cannabis industry how everything goes out the window, right? Like, it doesn't matter how grimy the hippie in front of you is. If somebody's giving free dabs, as soon as he steps away, you're stepping up to that piece of glass. It's so crazy. But the electric nails were amazing. We were at the Cow Palace in San Francisco, and the fire marshal had just been through saying, no smoking, no open flames. And literally there was like a chuckle because every single vendor had like an e-nail there, and people were just dabbing, and like the rise of concentrates was happening, I guess, like 2013. So of course I got one of these electric nails, and of course since I'm constantly in the nectar collecting business and making wax, it's hard not to taste it, but it is strong, and it is something that even I, as a would-be cannabis professional, only use at home because, I remember the first time I dabbed, it was like, the thought that went through my mind was like, it's high school high. It was like that high that you had never, that I'd forgotten about. Oh, wait, you can actually be too high. And, but...
You definitely can be too high. I think a lot of our viewers could understand that and sympathize.